Something was already inside the house before he fell asleep. He just didn't know it yet. If you want more true-feeling horror like this, subscribe now and hit like. It helps these stories keep coming. Ethan Moore had finished college early, which sounded impressive when he said it out loud, but felt hollow the moment life slowed down. No deadlines, no pressure, too many hours with nothing to fill them. His job contract wouldn't start for another 5 weeks, and most of his friends were still buried in finals. Days blurred together, heavy and unearned, like time he hadn't earned the right to waste. That was why he agreed when his mother asked him to check on her brother's beach house. The house belonged to his Uncle Daniel and sat outside a quiet stretch of coast near Maryline Beach, a place that emptied out once the season ended. Ethan lived inland, so the drive took just under 3 hours. Easy, simple, useful. It felt good to have a task, even a small one. The house itself was enormous, built to hold loud summers and too many relatives at once. Every room carried echoes of family noise that weren't there anymore. When Ethan arrived late in the afternoon, the neighborhood felt asleep. Tall dune grass bent in the wind. Narrow roads twisted without streetlights. No people, no movement. Inside, everything checked out. Pipes were fine, power steady, no leaks, no broken locks, but the silence sat wrong. He had never been alone in that house before. Without laughter, without arguments, without music, the place felt stripped like a body without breath. Night came faster than he expected. Ethan hated driving after dark, especially coastal roads with no shoulder and no cell signal. So he texted his mother and decided to stay overnight. One night wouldn't hurt. He cooked, scrolled through his phone, avoided thinking too hard, and eventually chose the largest bedroom on the 2nd floor. It had a private bathroom and a wide closet with sliding doors, the kind of room no one ever let him have during family gatherings. He fell asleep shortly after midnight. The sound woke him without warning, a dull impact, soft, heavy, like something shifting and falling inside the closet. Ethan's eyes opened, but his body stayed still. His heart accelerated, sharp and immediate. He stared toward the darkness where the closet doors waited. He didn't move. He didn't breathe deeply. He told himself it was nothing settling wood, old shelves, imagination. As sleep tried to pull him back under, the sound came again. Closer this time. And then his body stopped responding entirely. He couldn't turn his head, couldn't lift a finger. Panic bloomed cold in his chest as the closet door began to slide open, inch by inch, the sound barely louder than breath. A shape stepped out. It stood beside the bed, watching. 20 seconds passed, maybe more. Time lost meaning. Then the shape turned and left the room, its weight pressing into the floor with each step. Ethan lay frozen as the footsteps climbed upward, toward the 3rd floor, toward the rooms no one used. Ethan broke free from the paralysis with a violent gasp, like his lungs had forgotten their job. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. No footsteps. No movement. Just the low hum of the refrigerator somewhere below and the distant sound of wind pushing against the siding. He sat up slowly, every muscle screaming at him not to move too fast. His eyes stayed locked on the open closet. Nothing inside. Empty hangers. Shadows folded wrong in the corners. Whatever had been there wasn't hiding anymore. His phone lay on the nightstand. The screen lit up his hands as he grabbed it, fingers clumsy with adrenaline. No signal bars. One weak line flickered and vanished. He swallowed hard and slid out of bed, staying low, bare feet sinking into the cold floor. The footsteps he'd heard hadn't gone downstairs. They'd gone up. There was only one staircase, and it led straight past his door. Ethan locked the bedroom door and leaned against it, listening. Minutes dragged by. His heart refused to slow. Every sound felt amplified, the house breathing, the walls ticking as they cooled, the distant groan of beams settling under their own weight. Then came another sound. Not footsteps. Dragging. It came from above, slow and uneven, like something being pulled across carpet. A pause, then a faint thud, then another. Whatever was moving wasn't pacing, it was searching. Ethan slid down the door and sat on the floor, phone pressed to his chest. He tried calling emergency services again and again until, finally, the call connected. He whispered, barely forming words, explaining that someone was inside the house. The dispatcher told him help was on the way. Those words should have helped. They didn't, because the dragging stopped, and something new replaced it. A sound like breathing through a blocked nose. Wet, patient, right above him. The weight felt endless. Every second stretched until it hurt. Ethan imagined the ceiling giving way. Imagined something lowering itself down, inch by inch, learning the shape of him through the floor. Red and blue light eventually flickered across the bedroom walls. Relief hit him so hard it made him dizzy. When the police arrived, Ethan unlocked the door and stumbled downstairs, barely able to explain what had happened. The officers moved quickly, weapons drawn, clearing rooms with professional calm. They found nothing, no intruder, no sign of forced entry, no disturbed furniture. Ethan insisted the footsteps had gone up. He knew what he'd heard. The officers exchanged looks but said nothing. One suggested stress. Another mentioned sleep paralysis. Then they checked the third floor. One of the windows was unlocked, wide open to the night air. That made no sense. The house was sealed when Ethan arrived. He was sure of it. One officer stepped outside onto the back deck to scan the roof. His flashlight froze mid-sweep. "There," he said quietly. Ethan followed the beam. Something crouched on the roofline. It wasn't standing. It wasn't hiding. It was waiting. A bald shape, thin and angular, wrapped in torn clothing that clung to its body like it had been worn too long. Its skin looked wrong under the light, stretched, gray, almost damp. When the beam hit its face, it didn't react. It just stared back. The thing didn't resist when they brought it down. Didn't speak. Didn't blink. Its eyes were empty, like glass left behind after something moved out. Later, they told Ethan it was probably a squatter. Probably. But as they led it away, it turned its head once, not toward the officers, not toward the house, but directly toward Ethan, and smiled. They told Ethan the man would be processed, questioned, and sent somewhere he couldn't hurt anyone. They were wrong. By morning, the house felt contaminated. Sunlight didn't help. It only revealed how wrong everything looked, fingerprints that weren't there before, smudges along the walls near the staircase, faint streaks on the banister like something had steadied itself while moving upward. Ethan didn't sleep again. He packed his things with shaking hands and left before noon, refusing to look at the upper windows as he drove away. His uncle dismissed the incident over the phone, insisting it was just a transient who had found a way in. No need for new locks, no need for cameras. The house had stood for decades without them. That night, Ethan dreamed of the closet, not the one in the beach house, but the one in his childhood bedroom. In the dream, the door was already open. Something inside was breathing in rhythm with him, perfectly matched like it had learned him. He woke up choking. Weeks passed. His job began. Life resumed its shape, but the feeling stayed. A constant awareness of space behind him, of doors he hadn't checked, of rooms that felt too quiet. Then Mike called. Mike had access to his family's coastal house farther north, near Graywick Shore, older, isolated, usually empty. He invited Ethan down for a weekend. A distraction, fresh air, normality. Ethan hesitated, then agreed. The house smelled like salt and damp wood, like time sealed into the walls. They spent the first evening walking the beach, staying out until the sky turned black and the tide crept close. People still wandered the shoreline, but there were gaps, stretches of darkness where no lights reached. Later that night, exhaustion won. They went to bed early. The sound woke Ethan just after midnight. A sharp electronic shriek, not natural, not mechanical in a familiar way, an alarm. They ran upstairs together, hearts pounding, expecting smoke, fire, anything that made sense. But the third floor was intact. No heat, no flames, no damage. The noise came from one room, from under a pillow. Ethan found the device with trembling hands. Small, black, smooth, no markings, a single blinking red light. When he flipped the switch, the sound stopped instantly. Mike stared at it in silence. They tested it again. On, the alarm screamed. Off. Silence. There was only one way that switch could move. Someone had touched it. They locked themselves in a bedroom and called the police. When officers arrived, they searched the house top to bottom. What they found made no sense. Every window on the third floor was open. Wide. Even the bathroom ones. Drawers were pulled out. Mattresses overturned. The room where Ethan had found the device was completely destroyed, nothing like it had looked minutes earlier. No one was found. No footprints. No tools. No explanation. The officers left after advising them to lock everything. Ethan didn't sleep again. As dawn crept in, he stood at the window and watched the beach. For a brief moment, far down the shore, he saw a shape standing motionless near the waterline. Bald. Still. Waiting. Ethan didn't mention the figure on the beach to Mike. Some things felt dangerous to name. They left Greywick Shore before noon. Neither of them suggested staying longer. The drive back was quiet, broken only by the radio murmuring voices that felt too distant to belong to the same world. When they finally parted ways, Mike tried to laugh it off, promising himself it had just been a messed-up coincidence layered on exhaustion. Ethan knew better, because the feeling followed him home. Not fear exactly, not panic. Something slower, heavier, like being subtly misaligned with reality. Rooms felt slightly larger than they should have been, corners too dark, closets too deep. He began sleeping with lights on. The dreams returned, always the same structure. Different locations, same sensation. A door he didn't remember opening. A space that shouldn't exist. Breathing that wasn't his, sinking itself carefully, patiently to his rhythm. Sometimes he woke with the taste of salt in his mouth. Then the noises started while he was awake. Soft impacts at night. A distant thump. The unmistakable sound of weight shifting behind closed doors. Every time he checked, nothing was there. Nothing ever was. Until one evening, after work, he noticed his bedroom closet wasn't fully shut. He stood in the doorway for a long time, keys still in his hand, heart hammering. He knew he'd closed it that morning. He always did now. Ritual mattered. The air inside the room felt stale, thick with a smell he couldn't place. Damp fabric, old sweat, something organic and wrong. He didn't open the closet. He backed out and slept on the couch instead. At 2:17 a.m., his phone vibrated. A notification from an unknown number. No message, just a photo. It showed a hallway, his hallway. Taken from the far end, angled low, like whoever held the phone hadn't bothered to stand upright. Ethan's blood turned to ice. Before he could react, another image arrived. A closet door. Open. Something pale visible inside, pressed too close to the frame, skin folded unnaturally, like it didn't fully understand the shape it was wearing. The final message came without an image. You left it open, the house creaked. Slow footsteps moved across the floor, toward the living room, toward him. Ethan didn't scream, didn't run. He stayed frozen as the sound stopped just outside his field of vision. Then came the breathing. Close. Learning. Ethan didn't move. Not because he couldn't, but because he understood that movement meant acknowledgement. The breathing behind him was quiet, controlled, unnervingly calm. It didn't sound tired. It didn't rush. It carried the confidence of something that had already decided the night belonged to it, and time was merely something to wait out. His phone lit up again. Another message. Silent. Turn around, it wasn't a warning. It was a rule. Ethan lowered the phone slowly. In the black reflection of the screen, he didn't see his own face. He saw a shape standing too close behind him, not fully inside the room, not fully outside it. The space around his shoulders looked distorted, as if the air itself had been gently pushed aside to make room. The smell grew stronger. Damp fabric, old salt, something that had learned houses but never belonged in them. The breathing shifted, adjusted. matched his. Ethan closed his eyes. When he opened them again, morning light spilled through the curtains. He was in his bed, not on the couch. The phone rested neatly on the nightstand. No unread messages, no notifications. His body felt heavy, sore in a way sleep never caused. The house was silent. He searched every room. The hallway, the kitchen, the bathroom. Nothing was disturbed. No doors open. No smells lingering. No signs of intrusion until he reached the trash bin. At the bottom lay a small black object half covered by paper towels. The device, smooth, unmarked. The same blinking red light, now dark. Ethan stared at it, his stomach tightening. He didn't remember bringing it home, didn't remember touching it, didn't remember turning it off. He wrapped it in plastic, drove far beyond the city limits, and threw it into a ravine choked with weeds and trash, refusing to watch it disappear. That night, he slept without dreams. The next day, a coworker asked why Ethan looked like he hadn't been alone in weeks. Ethan laughed it off. Later, he noticed the doors in his apartment no longer creaked, and sometimes, when he lay still in bed, his breathing lagged behind as if something else had started first and he was only following. Ethan tried to run his life like a clean system again. Work, gym, groceries, sleep. He doubled down on routines the way some people double down on prayer. He kept every door shut, every window latched. He stopped letting closet doors sit even a finger width ajar. If something could be left open, he made sure it wasn't. For almost a week, nothing happened. That was the worst part. The silence felt staged, like a room after a performance where the audience has already left but the lights are still on. He caught himself listening for sounds that weren't there, holding his breath to see if the apartment would breathe without him. On the 7th night, he woke at 3:06 a.m. to a familiar shriek. The same thin, surgical alarm from Greywick Shore, high enough to hurt, steady enough to feel intelligent. The sound wasn't in the bedroom. It was farther away, muted by walls. From the closet in the hallway. He stood in the dark, barefoot on cold tile, staring at that door as if it were a mouth. The alarm continued, perfectly consistent, as though it had been waiting for his eyes to open. His phone had signal. Full bars, he didn't call. He didn't want anyone else to come inside. The alarm stopped on its own. A second later, something clicked softly in the hallway closet, like a switch being moved by a careful finger. Ethan backed into the living room, keeping his gaze fixed on the darkness beyond the doorway. He could taste salt again, like ocean air trapped in a sealed jar. The closet door didn't open. Instead, the apartment changed around him in tiny, impossible ways. The lamp on the end table flickered once, twice, then steadied. The light did not push the darkness back. It only made it look textured, damp, alive, like skin that had never seen sun. The air grew cooler. Not from the vents, from the walls themselves. The corner near the ceiling darkened, and the dark didn't behave like shadow. It looked thicker, packed, the way wet cloth looks when it's folded. Then he heard it. A slow inhale from somewhere that was not the hallway and not the living room, but very close to both. It exhaled like a door opening on a damp basement. Ethan forced himself to speak, barely above a whisper. "What do you want?" The apartment answered with another noise, soft dragging, the brush of fabric against drywall, like someone sliding along the wall while staying just out of sight. It moved behind him in a curve that traced the room. His phone vibrated. A new message from the unknown number. No photo this time, just text. "You closed it." Good. Another message arrived immediately. Now open something else. He stared at the words until they stopped being letters and became shapes. The request was simple. But the moment he understood it, he understood the real rule. It didn't need access to his home. It wanted access to his choices. The hallway closet door creaked, not opening, just flexing like it was being tested. The air in the living room tightened, heavy with dampness, and that thick darkness near the ceiling began to drift, slow and deliberate, as if it were leaning down to see him better. Ethan turned toward the kitchen, Every cabinet was shut, every drawer aligned. He could keep it that way. He could keep everything sealed. His fingers wrapped around a cabinet handle anyway, not because he wanted to, because his hand felt guided, patient pressure applied to muscle and tendon, a suggestion that had become a command. He pulled. The cabinet door opened 3 inches. The apartment went very still. Then, from inside that small gap of darkness, he heard a soft, pleased sound, like breathing that finally found the right rhythm. And Ethan understood with sick clarity that it wasn't teaching him to be careful. It was teaching him to comply. Ethan didn't remember falling asleep. He remembered standing in the kitchen, fingers still touching the cabinet door, the darkness inside it deeper than the space should have allowed. He remembered the sound, that quiet, satisfied breathing, and the certainty that something had finished a lesson. Morning arrived without transition. Sunlight filled the apartment, clean and ordinary, exposing nothing out of place. The cabinet was closed, every door was shut, the air smelled normal, too normal. Ethan checked his phone. No messages, no unknown number, no record of the night at all. He went to work anyway. Days passed, then weeks. Nothing dramatic happened. No alarms, no footsteps, no shadows bending where they shouldn't. That absence became the new horror. Life resumed, but it felt rehearsed, like he was hitting marks in a script already written. He caught himself pausing before opening doors, waiting not for permission, but for approval. Sometimes it came as a sensation, a subtle easing in his chest, a warmth behind his eyes. Other times it came as resistance. One evening he tried to leave a window open, just an inch, just to prove something to himself. The latch slipped from his fingers and snapped shut hard enough to sting. His hand had moved on its own. He laughed afterward. The sound felt borrowed. Months later, Ethan moved apartments. New building, new locks, no history. The first night there, he stood in the bedroom and stared at the closet. It was deeper than the others had been, narrower, wrong in a way he couldn't articulate. He slept with it closed. At 2:41 a.m., he woke to breathing that wasn't his. It wasn't behind him. It was synchronized. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, chest rising and falling slightly out of time, like an echo chasing a sound that had already happened. When he held his breath, the breathing continued for 1 extra second before stopping. Testing him, the realization came quietly without panic. It no longer needed to hide. It no longer needed devices or alarms or doors left open by accident. It had learned his habits, his fears, his patterns. It had learned where he would hesitate, where he would comply. In the morning, Ethan noticed something new in the mirror. Not a mark, not a shadow, a delay. His reflection blinked just a fraction of a second after he did. He stopped opening things unnecessarily after that. Stopped questioning the instincts that told him when to stay still, when to close something, when to obey. Life became easier once he accepted the guidance. Quieter, safer. But sometimes, late at night, he wonders whose breathing starts first now. If this story unsettled you, subscribe and like more are coming. And tell me in the comments, if something learns you this well, how do you know when it's finished?